Welcome to today's edition of the IntoTexas AI podcast. It's your look at AI news and trends impacting Texas. I'm your host, Shannon Belew. Let's get started. The Texas AI paradox. Today, I want to start with a contradiction. According to recently released research from Microsoft, one of the biggest risks in the AI economy is a growing divide between urban and rural communities. Large cities are generally adopting AI faster. Rural communities are often lagging behind. And that pattern should not surprise anyone. We've seen it before with broadband internet. We've seen it with technology investment in general. And we've certainly seen it with workforce development. But here's the contradiction. Some of the communities that are helping build the future AI economy, they're not located in downtown Dallas. They're not in Austin. They're not in Houston. They're in places like Abilene, Texas. They're scattered across communities all over West Texas. They're in rural communities that are helping host the infrastructure that will power artificial intelligence for decades to come. And that raises an intriguing question. Could Texas become one of the first states in the US to narrow the AI divide rather than widen it? That's what we're exploring today, the new AI divide. So, in the last episode of our podcast, we discussed the latest Texas Business Outlook survey from the Dallas Federal Reserve. As a reminder, that report showed that Texas businesses are definitely increasingly adopting AI. And specifically, I should point out if you haven't watched the last podcast episode. This survey went specifically to the manufacturing and services sectors. So, executives in those two sectors were the ones answering the survey, went out to about a little over 300 executives. And they did see that most definitely there's been substantial shift from 2024 to 2026 in terms of these Texas businesses in these sectors adopting and using AI. And they really found that that conversation is shifting from should we use AI to how do we create value from AI? Well, at almost the same time that this survey was released, there was a report recently released from Microsoft, and it had some new research which examined AI adoption across the United States. Now, it also found that Texas as a state was, I think, number three in terms of adoption. And surprisingly, I want to say maybe Utah was number one. But the rankings of how states were using AI isn't really what was important to me in this report. I thought what they found and identified that was even more interesting than the fact that, look, AI adoption is definitely growing, is that it's not growing evenly. So urban regions continue to move faster than rural communities. And that's where the concerns begin. Historically, economic opportunities tied to new technologies are often concentrated in major metropolitan regions. So the question is whether AI follows that same typical path or whether states like Texas can create a different outcome. And this is the Texas paradox because many of the AI investments that we've covered again on this show aren't happening in traditional technology corridors that you would think about, right? Those big urban centers. Think about some of the biggest stories that we've discussed, even in the last few months. They really take place in outlying communities, again, such as Abilene, all over West Texas. These are the communities that have large scale infrastructure projects tied to data centers and AI compute power and semiconductors and energy investments that are supporting the future AI growth. So these aren't necessarily places that people associate with the technology economy, yet they're becoming increasingly important to it. And in some ways, Texas is reversing the traditional model that we see where you invest and have these big explosions of technology. Again, in Texas, it's happening in these rural communities. So instead of concentrating AI infrastructure exclusively in major cities, you see a large portion of what will truly fuel the AI economy or even prop it up, right, is being propelled by these rural communities. Now, let's be clear, that doesn't automatically create prosperity for these smaller communities. A data center does not automatically create AI fluency. Hosting AI infrastructure doesn't guarantee that local businesses become more competitive. It certainly doesn't guarantee that workers have new opportunities or more opportunities or better pay, but it does create something important. It creates a chance. And that's where the next phase of this story begins, from infrastructure to participation. So I think this is the question that Texas as a state and our leaders should be asking. How do we move from infrastructure to participation from that infrastructure? How do we ensure communities that are helping build the AI economy also get to participate in the value that it creates? Because ultimately, economic value isn't created by servers, it's created by organizations, by businesses, workers, entrepreneurs, schools, healthcare systems, local governments. In other words, people. And that's where a second piece of research enters this conversation: AI fluency. So, Anthropic, the company behind Claude, right? So many people use that. They recently released some research around a concept called AI fluency. And the basic idea is simple: access to AI and effective use of AI are not the same thing. According to the research, and where they started with this research, it typically was founded around universities, educational systems, and students. So just, keep that in mind. But the most successful AI users tend to engage differently with the technology. They ask better questions, they refine outputs, they challenge the assumptions, and they verify information. So they are collaborating with AI rather than simply accepting whatever answer appears on the screen. In short, access creates opportunity, but fluency creates advantage. And that's important because two organizations, think about two companies side by side, can invest in the exact same technologies, but they can achieve or not achieve very different outcomes when we think about success and productivity and all the things that we look to and want from AI. So let's also now talk about the IntoTexas definition of AI fluency. And this is where I think we have the potential to really shift the conversation in general. When I hear the phrase AI fluency, I certainly don't think about prompting a chat tool, right? I think more about those business outcomes because organizations, well, they don't succeed because they purchased AI software. They succeed because they used AI plus human interaction to successfully create value for the business. And so here's the definition that I keep coming back to and that we actually use at IntoTexas. AI fluency is an organization's ability to understand, evaluate, govern, and apply AI in ways that create measurable, consistent business value. And that's very different from adoption. Adoption means you simply bought the tool, right? You gave your team members access to the technology. Fluency means you change the outcome. An AI adopting organization runs experiments. And look, there's nothing wrong with experimenting and playing. We know that. That's part of the process. But when you talk about evolving to outcomes, right? An AI fluent organization creates and measures results. An AI adopting organization talks about technology. An AI fluent organization talks about productivity, customer experience, efficiency, growth, and competitive advantages. That's the difference. So, why does this matter for rural Texas? Well, again, let's bring it back to the communities that Microsoft identified as being most at risk at falling behind. The goal certainly isn't to turn rural Texas into Silicon Valley. That's probably the wrong objective. The real opportunity, I think, is helping rural Texas become more AI fluent. Can local hospitals use AI to improve care? Can manufacturers become more productive? Look, can agricultural businesses improve operations? Can small businesses compete more effectively? Can local governments deliver services more efficiently? Those are the questions that matter because AI fluency isn't really about technology, it's about capability. And capability is what creates economic. So, as we wrap up today, I want to revisit the Dallas Fed survey, right? It showed us that Texas businesses are adopting AI. And then the Microsoft survey highlighted the risk of that growing urban rural AI divide. And then Anthropic entered the picture with its report highlighting that need for AI fluency. But the part of the story that I think is worth further reflection is how the state of Texas cuts across all three of those things. Texas is helping build the infrastructure of the AI economy. The next challenge is ensuring that more Texans get to participate in the value it creates. Because the future winners won't simply be the places that host AI or fuel the technology. They'll be the places that become AI fluent. And if Texas can connect the construction of AI infrastructure with consistent outcomes from AI fluency, and narrow or even eradicate the urban rural AI divide in the process, well, then it has the opportunity to truly become the undisputed leader in how to build and use AI for meaningful advancements in how we work and how we live. That's it for today's episode of the IntoTexas AI podcast. I'd love to hear your perspective on AI fluency. So please be sure to drop a comment in the chat so we can continue this conversation. As always, thank you for listening, for watching. And if you'd like to continue getting more insights on the way that AI is reshaping Texas, then I invite you to continue listening and watching. Please share it with your friends and business associates. And certainly, I would love to have you subscribe and be a regular viewer. As always, I thank you for your time. I'm Shannon Belew, and I will see you next time.